Tony Soprano, Anthony John Soprano Sr., is a fictional character and the protagonist in the HBO television drama series The Sopranos 1999-2007, portrayed by James Gandolfini. Usually referred to as Tony, the Italian-American character was conceived by The Sopranos creator and showrunner David Chase, who was also largely responsible for the character's story arc throughout the show's 6 seasons. Gandolfini was ultimately cast in the role ahead of several other actors including Stephen Van Zandt and Michael Rispoli. The character is loosely based on real-life New Jersey mobster Vincent Vinny Ocean Palermo, a former caporegime capo and de facto boss of the DeCavalcante crime family. Bobby Boriello and Mark Damiano Roman II portrayed Soprano as a child in 1 episode each. Danny Petrillo played the character as a teenager in 3 episodes. James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, will portray a young Tony Soprano in the 2021 prequel film, The Many Saints of Newark. In the first season, Tony is a capo and also serves as acting underboss for ailing acting boss Giacomo Jackie April and the Daimio crime family. Between the first and second seasons, he is promoted to street boss, a position he retains until the 6th season. His uncle Corrado Jr. Soprano is the official boss up until early in the 6th season, but has little or no actual power. Throughout the series, Tony struggles to balance the conflicting needs of his actual family wife Carmilla, daughter Meadow, son AJ, and mother Livia with those of the mafia family he controls. He often displays behavior traits characteristic of a violent sociopath, struggles with depression, and is prone to panic attacks. He seeks treatment from Dr. Jennifer Melfi, a character Chase modeled after his own psychiatrist, in the first episode and remains in therapy on and off up until the penultimate episode of the series. Both the Tony Soprano character and Gandolfini's performance garnered widespread critical acclaim, with Soprano being often cited as one of the greatest and most influential characters in television history. Gandolfini, for his portrayal of the character, won 3 Emmy Awards for Best Lead Actor in a Drama Series, 3 Screen Actors Guild Awards for Best Male Actor in a Drama Series, and a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor Television Series Drama, as well as 2 additional Asagi Awards for Best Performance by an Ensemble in a Drama. Casting. James Gandolfini was invited to audition for the part of Tony Soprano after casting director Susan Fitzgerald saw a short clip of his performance in the 1993 film True Romance, ultimately receiving the role ahead of several other actors due to his large stature and acting capability. Anthony LaPaglia was interested in the role but due to his Broadway production and the decision not to go with Fox, he was not further considered. Series creator David Chase invited Stephen Van Zandt, who was a guitarist in Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, to audition for the role of Tony Soprano. Van Zandt, who had never acted before, felt that the role should go to an experienced actor, so Chase wrote him into a part that did not exist as Silvio Dante. Michael Rispoli, who played Jackie April Sr., the ailing mob boss of the Daimio family in the first 4 episodes of the series, was also very close to being cast as Tony Soprano. In the pilot, Tony was named Tommy in homage to the character played by James Cagney in The Public Enemy, Tom Powers, but the clearance on naming the character Tom was never given. As methods to focus anger into his performances, Gandolfini had said he would deliberately hit himself on the head, stay up all night to evoke the desired reaction, drink several cups of coffee, or walk around with a rock in his shoe. Fictional character biography. Early life. Tony Soprano was born in 1959 to Livia and Johnny Soprano. His father was a capo in the Daimio crime family. He grew up living with his parents and 2 sisters, Janice and Barbara, in the iron-bound neighborhood of Newark, New Jersey. Tony's paternal grandfather, Corrado Soprano Sr., was from Ariano in the province of Avellino, who immigrated to the United States in 1911. He was a master stonemason who helped to build a church in Tony's old neighborhood. In adulthood, Tony recalls how Johnny used Janice as a cover for attending meetings with criminal associates at a children's amusement park, leading him to assume she was his father's favorite child. In therapy, when asked to remember happy childhood memories about his mother, Tony struggles to come up with any. He later describes his mother as a cruel, joyless woman who wore his father down to a little nub. Tony has a troubled relationship with Janice due to her flighty and impulsive nature, which leads to her constantly relying on him for financial and emotional support. Their bond is further complicated in adulthood when she murders her boyfriend, Richie April, one of Tony's subordinates, for striking her during a domestic dispute, leading to her calling on Tony for assistance in disposing of his body. In high school, Tony met his future bride Carmela De Angelis and became friends with Artie Bucco and Davy Scatino. He was also close to his maternal cousin Tony Blundetto. Their mutual relatives called them Tony Uncle Al and Tony Uncle Johnny after their fathers to tell them apart, although Tony and his friends would take to calling him Tony B. The two Tonys spent summers at the farm of their uncle Pat Blundetto, a former daimyo soldat. When they were in their early 20s, Tony B was arrested for his part in a hijacking. Tony was supposed to join Tony B on the job but failed to appear because of a panic attack after an argument with his mother, which resulted in his blacking out and suffering a head injury. For years after Tony claimed that he had sustained the injury during a mugging, a story he maintained to allay his guilt. As a young adult, he attended Seton Hall University for a semester and a half before dropping out to pursue a life of crime. Tony was part of an unofficial crew of young criminals consisting of Silvio Dante, Ralph Cifaretto, and Giacomo Jackie April, Sr. He and Jackie gained notoriety in the daimyo family by robbing a card game run by Feech Lam Mana. Ralph was left out of the plan due to debilitating pain from a venereal disease, leading to a lifelong animosity between the two. Under the tutelage of his father's friend Paulie Walnuts Gualtieri, he committed his first murder in 1982 at the age of 22, killing a small-time bookie named Willie Overall. Following the murder, Paulie would become Tony's mentor in the mafia lifestyle, with Paulie eventually settling into a role as Tony's own capo. Johnny shepherded Tony through his ascendancy until his death in 1986 from emphysema. When he died, Johnny had risen to the level of capo of his crew, as had his older brother, Junior. Junior took over as Tony's mentor, with parental figures Salvatore Big Pussy Bompansiro and Paulie passing their loyalty to Tony upon Johnny's death, while Silvio joined the crew. Tony became acting capo of his father's old crew, a position which eventually became permanent. By 1995, Jackie April, Sr., became acting boss after Ercole Eckley, daimyo, was sent to prison. The daimyo family was prosperous under Jackie's rule until 1998, when he was diagnosed with intestinal cancer. With Jackie in and out of the hospital, a power struggle develops between Tony and Junior. With Jackie's death in mid-1998, a succession crisis reaches a point where a war within the family appears imminent. However, Tony brings a quick end to the conflict by endorsing Junior, the official boss of the family. Unbeknownst to Junior, Tony secretly strikes a deal with the rest of the family to be the true boss, allowing Junior to believe that he's in power and act as a distraction for the FBI. Narrated killings committed by Tony Soprano. Tony personally committed 8 murders in the show. Furthermore, as a boss, he was responsible for the deaths of others killed on his orders. The 8 known murders, all explicitly presented on screen, were Willie Overall, shot and killed by Tony to make his bones become a made man, 1982, in Remember When. Fabian Febi Petrillo, strangled by Tony for ratting out members of Paulie and Pussy's crew and joining the Witness Protection Program, 1998, in college. Chucky Sr., shot and killed by Tony for conspiring to kill him with Junior, 1998. In I Dream of Jeannie Cusimano, Matthew Bevilacqua, killed by Tony and Big Pussy for attempting to kill Christopher Moltisanti, Tony's protege and cousin-in-law 2000, in From Where to Eternity. Salvatore Big Pussy Bompensiro, executed by Tony, Silvio, and Paulie on a yacht, after they discovered that he was an FBI informant 2000 in Funhouse. Ralph Cifaretto, choked/bludgeoned to death in a fight over Ralph's supposedly killing their prize, winning racehorse Piomai for insurance money 2002, in Whoever Did This. Tony Blundetto, shot and killed by Tony with a shotgun for the unauthorized killings of Joe Pepys and Billy Lee Tardo, to spare him from being the subject of torture from Phil Leotardo in revenge for his brother's death, as well as spare his crew from the threat of retaliation 2004, in All Due Respect. Christopher Moltisanti, suffocated by Tony, following a major car accident with Christopher as the driver and Tony as the passenger. Christopher revealed that he was still using drugs and was worried about going to the hospital 2007 in Kennedy and Heidi. It is made clear that some of these murders leave Tony perplexed as to how to cope with the situation. Most notably, after murdering Christopher Moltisanti, he feels a rush of relief for finally being rid of an associate whom he feels he can no longer trust. He has to show the sad face while the rest of the family grieves, but Tony reassures himself that Moltisanti's murder was necessary, despite the hurt caused to the family. The murder of Fabian "Febby" Petrillo in college is out of retaliation for Febby getting members of Tony's crew sent to prison when he ratted them out to get immunity. Tony does this out of a feeling of justice since he has contempt for Febby getting away with it initially. The murder of Big Pussy in Funhouse weighs heavily on Tony. He is at first tempted to spare his old friend and even seems to be in denial for quite a long time. In the years to follow, Tony talks about this with Paulie and Silvio, who also participated in the murder, and all three have had haunting dreams of the murder of their friend. Tony kills Ralph Cifaretto after their horse, Piomai, dies amid suspicious circumstances in Whoever Did This. Tony tries to confront Ralph about the situation, but, after some heated words, Tony loses control and murders Ralph following a violent fight. Though no solid proof was found that the fire killing Piomai was arson, Tony is convinced Ralph did it. It is also implied that this burst of rage could have been fueled by anger over Ralph's brutal murder of stripper Tracy, considering Tony uttered she was a beautiful, innocent creature. "What'd she ever do to you? You fucking killed her," which could apply to both the female horse and the young woman. The murder of Matthew Bevilacqua is vengeance, an act that had to be carried out since the fact that Christopher was shot was a direct affront to him as boss. Tony takes satisfaction in it, as it is revenge for an attempt on the life of one of his relatives. This murder was the closest Tony came to getting in trouble with the authorities, due to having been seen by a witness. In addition to the potential arrest, Tony was also uneasy about the murder due to Bevilacqua's young age and that his last words were "mommy." This inspires Tony to spend more quality time with his son. The murder of his cousin, Tony Blundetto, in All Due Respect, is solely to save him from a far worse death if he were to fall into Phil's hands, and so that Tony does not lose his reputation. The murder of his nephew, Christopher Moltisanti in Kennedy and Heidi, is not done out of mob-related necessity. Christopher had been addicted to heroin, cocaine, and alcohol for many years and had not conquered his addiction in rehab. While Moltisanti presents a threat to Tony's life and the New Jersey mob, it is ultimately an emotional reaction. Tony is about to call 911 following a motor vehicle accident. Christopher, who needs urgent medical attention, tells him that he would never pass the drug test and would therefore lose his driver's license. He asks Tony to call for a taxi. Tony looks at the baby seat on the back seat of the SUV, which had been destroyed by a tree branch, closes his phone, and suffocates Christopher by holding his nose shut so that he chokes to death on his blood. Tony does not plan to murder Christopher but sees the opportunity after the car accident. Tony is never suspected of this murder. As a father, Tony lives in North Caldwell, New Jersey with his wife and two children, Meadow Soprano and Anthony A.J. Soprano. He also treats Christopher Moltisanti, his wife's first cousin once removed, as a son in many ways. Tony is often portrayed as a loving father. He attends his children's sporting events regularly and does all he can to ensure they have luxuries and opportunities. He hopes that both his children will escape the life of crime he has led. Tony takes great pride in Meadow's achievements. In season 1, he is moved to tears by her performance at a choir recital. He often tells people about her aspiration to become a pediatrician. He also sometimes alienates his children with his behavior. He has always tried to conceal his criminal life from them, something that Meadow saw through early on, and AJ also realizes with guidance from his sister. Tony's overprotectiveness of Meadow leads to feuds between them on several occasions. For example, her first boyfriend at college is of Black and Jewish ancestry, and Tony's dislike of him leads him to try to drive him away. Meadow learns of her father's actions and does not speak to him for several months, eventually reconciling at Christmas in 2001. Meadow's next boyfriend is Jackie Aprile Jr., the son of Tony's old friend, the late Jackie Aprile Esser. Tony had promised Jackie Jr.'s father that he would keep his son out of the mafia life. Tony is initially pleased with the relationship, believing Jackie to be a hard-working pre-med student from a good family. However, since Jackie's uncle Richie Aprile's release from prison and subsequent death, Tony realizes that Jackie had become more involved in the mafia when he sees him at strip clubs and a casino. He eventually beats Jackie up to warn him about abusing his daughter's feelings and confiscates his gun. Tony begins seeing much of himself and his treatment of Carmilla in Jackie's relationship with Meadow. Jackie is killed by Vito for his involvement in a robbery at Christopher's and Furio's executive card game and for shooting the made man, Furio. This drives Meadow to drink and depression, although they'd broken up shortly before his death. After Jackie's death, when Meadow is out for dinner with her mystery boyfriend Patrick Parisi, New York mob member Salvatore Coco Cogliano walks up to the table and makes drunk remarks about her looks and how Tony must love tucking you in at night. After taking advice from her mother, Meadow tells Tony, who hides his rage and says Coco is harmless and an idiot. Tony then tracks down Coco and Butch DeConcini at John's restaurant on East 12th Street in Manhattan. Tony viciously pistol whips Coco several times with a snub-nosed revolver and warns Butch at gunpoint to shut up and remain seated at his table. After breaking off some of Coco's teeth with a curb stomp, Tony leaves the restaurant. Tony's feelings toward his son are mixed. He worries about his future. From the beginning, Tony has doubts that his son could succeed in the mafia, telling his therapist, Dr. Jennifer Melfi, that he'd never make it. His fears are confirmed as AJ consistently demonstrates throughout the series that he lacks his father's cunning and dominating persona. Tony tells AJ numerous times that he is proud that his son is gentle and kind. Tony is especially proud of AJ's prowess on the football field, even amid his failing grades in high school, but is frustrated with AJ's lack of focus after graduation. After flunking out of Ramapo State, AJ loafs around the house, parties, and for a time holds a job at Blockbuster until his father gets him a job working construction. There, AJ meets Blanca, and in Tony's opinion, AJ does well until he and Blanca break up. Tony worries about AJ's depression, the rotten putrid Soprano gene that Tony believes he passed down to his son. Hoping to get AJ back on track, Tony rekindles AJ's friendship with the Jasons, sons of two of his associates, and AJ seems to be doing better. With the help of a therapist and medication, AJ is finally getting back to college, this time at Rutgers University, to take classes and party with girls, as Tony believes every college kid should. This later turns sour after AJ sees his new friends attack a Somalian student on a bike and he regresses into depression. AJ tries to drown himself in a swimming pool but decides he wants to live. Tony hears his cries for help and rescues him. After AJ is released from a mental health ward, Tony and Carmela dissuade him from joining the army and persuade him instead to become involved in a film bankrolled by Carmine Lupertazzi Jr., with the possibility of opening a club. Interests and hobbies. Tony is an animal lover and enjoys feeding the ducks which visit his pool. He has a sentimental attachment towards animals, as he had been traumatized by the loss of his childhood dog, as revealed in the episode in Camelot, whose name was Tippy. When he goes to confront Angie Bonpensiero as she's walking her poodle, the dog greets Tony in a friendly manner, which Tony reciprocates. During Christopher Moltisanti's intervention, when Tony hears Christopher accidentally suffocated Adriana's dog, he is furious, saying, "I ought to suffocate you, you little prick." He becomes involved in horse racing through his friend Hesh Rapkin, who owns a stable, and invests in a racehorse named Pyomai. When his horse is killed in a fire possibly set by Ralph Cifaretto, Tony is deeply upset and saddened and kills Cifaretto, yelling, "She was a beautiful, innocent creature. What did she ever do to you?" He repeats, "You fucking killed her," while banging Cifaretto's head against the floor. When informed by Carmela that a black bear has been foraging in his home's backyard while they were separated during season 5, he reacts with interest rather than fear. During his stay in the hospital after his shooting, he can be seen reading a book about dinosaurs given by Carmela. In the series finale, Tony finds a stray cat at his safe house during the war with New York and takes a liking to it. He brings it back to Satriel's, where it stares at the deceased Chris Moltisanti's photo, much to Paulie's dismay. Tony is seen many times throughout the show engaging in both freshwater and saltwater angling. His son Anthony Jr. sometimes accompanies him on fishing outings. During the second season, he presents his son with a Fenwick rod and a Penn International reel, both extremely high-quality product. In the sixth season, while in Florida with Paulie, he rents a sport fishing boat. He is sometimes haunted by visions of Pussy Bonpensiero incarnated in the form of a fish, presumably a reference to the disposal of his body in the ocean. A big-mouth Billy Bass novelty singing fish, brought into the bada bing by Georgie and another, later presented to him as a Christmas present by his daughter Meadow, recall his nightmare and disturb him greatly. Throughout the series, Tony is shown to be a frequent cigar smoker, as well as an occasional cigarette smoker. He can be seen smoking a cigar during important events, such as shortly before being told of his mother's death and when disposing of Ralph Cifaretto's corpse. In the season 1 episode A Hit is a Hit, he gives his doctor and next-door neighbor Bruce Cusimano a box of Cuban cigars as a thank you present for referring him to Dr. Melfi. He is also a gun enthusiast and is shown to have an arsenal in his home. He gives guns as birthday gifts to his father-in-law Hugh De Angelis in Marco Polo and receives one from Bobby Baxiairi on his birthday in Soprano home movies. Tony enjoys sports, particularly baseball, football, basketball, golf, and horse racing. He played baseball and football at West Essex High School and is a fan of the New York Yankees and New York Jets. He has taken AJ to New Jersey Nets and New Jersey Devils games occasionally throughout the series. Some objects and posters in AJ's room confirm this. He plays golf with Johnny Sack at Upper Montclair Country Club. A large portion of his income is derived from illegal sports betting. Tony is an amateur yachtsman and has owned 2 motor yachts throughout the show, Stugotz and Stugotz Roman II, where several of his affairs take place. The name comes from the southern Italian phrase sto caso, literally meaning this dick or my dick, and depending on the context, what the fuck or my ass. Tony maintains an avid interest in history, particularly World War Roman II. Throughout seasons 4 and 5, Tony is seen watching Vietnam War documentaries. He is a big fan of President John F. Kennedy and owns one of his Captain Sailor hats, which he won at an auction. He is often shown watching programs on the History Channel about great leaders such as George S. Patton, Erwin Rommel, and Winston Churchill. He reads The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is quoted by several other characters on the show, particularly Paulie Walnuts. Tony is often seen watching classic mob films. For example, he is shown watching The Public Enemy 1931 throughout the episode Prasha Lavoshka, which addresses his mother's death. He also shares a love for the Godfather series, wondering what went wrong in the third installment. Tony listens to classic, progressive rock and pop music, particularly of the 1960s and 1970s. Over the course of the show, he is seen to enjoy AC/DC, Deep Purple, Eagles, Eric Clapton, Jefferson Airplane, Jethro Tull, Journey, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Pink Floyd, Rush, Steely Dan, The Clash, The Chi-Lites, The Lost Boys, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Van Morrison. Vehicles. Like most of the mobsters in the series, Tony is shown to be partial to Cadillac and Lincoln vehicles. When discussing with Dr. Melfi a bizarre dream in which his penis falls off, he mentions that he went to the guy who used to work on my Lincoln when I drove Lincolns. For the first 4 seasons, Tony drives a Burgundy 1999 Chevrolet Suburban LT Forksfur, but in Season 5, this has been replaced with a black Cadillac Escalade ESV. This black Escalade is totaled in an accident and quickly replaced with a white Escalade ESV. Tony has this Escalade until the end of the series. He has also occasionally used Carmela's Mercedes-Benz E-Class station wagon and drove it when they went places together. Extramarital affairs. Throughout the series, Tony is shown to be a serial adulterer. He typically has mistresses whom he consistently sees for long periods, though he also has several brief one-night stands with strippers from the Bada Bing. His wife Carmela is tacitly aware of his infidelity and usually views it as a form of masturbation, though sometimes the bottled-up tensions explode in domestic arguments. At the end of Season 4, Irina telephones Carmela in a jealous rage at Tony's cheating on her with her cousin Svetlana, which causes Carmela to finally snap. Carmela throws Tony out of the house and begins divorce proceedings. Tony has a strong preference for women of European, particularly Italian descent, with dark hair and eyes and exotic features. His mistresses have been, in chronological order, of Russian Irina and later Svetlana, Italian Gloria Trillo, Italian-Cuban Valentina La Paz, and Jewish descent Juliana Skiff. He favors dark features but also has a few brief flings with blonde American-European women, including a stewardess from Icelandic Airways and a medical assistant. He has one very short encounter with an Asian American escort during the test dream. Mistresses. Irina Peltsin, a young Russian woman whom he sees consistently throughout the first 2 seasons. She frequently calls Tony's house when drunk, and when Carmela hints that she knows that he is seeing her, he breaks off the relationship. After her suicide attempt, Tony sends Silvio to give her a monetary compensation of $75,000 and try to reason her into moving on with her life. Gloria Trillo, an Italian-American Mercedes-Benz saleswoman with stylish tastes. Tony dates her throughout Season 3 after meeting her at Dr. Melfi's office. Dr. Melfi repeatedly expresses her disapproval of their relationship, knowing it will likely turn out a disaster. He eventually stops seeing her when she begins stalking him and calling his house while exhibiting manipulative behaviors reminding him of his own mother, which is foreshadowed very early on when she teases him by saying "poor you" jokingly at first. He also understands, through Dr. Melfi's hints, that Gloria is trying to use him as a means to commit suicide akin to the suicide by cop phenomenon. Tony asks Patsy Parisi to threaten her. Parisi tells her that if she tries again to harass Tony, the last face she'll see will be his, not Tony's, and that it won't be cinematic. It turns out that it throws her over the edge as she commits suicide soon afterwards, hanging herself. This greatly upsets Tony, who blames it on himself as well as Dr. Melfi. Valentina Lapp has a beautiful art dealer of Italian and Cuban descent, initially the mistress of Ralph Cifaretto. Tony dates her throughout season 4. They share a love of horses, and she visits Pyomai at the stable with Tony. She accidentally sets her robe on fire in season 5 while cooking eggs for Tony. Shortly thereafter he decides to get back together with Carmela, and he breaks up with Valentina while she is in the hospital recovering from second-degree burns to her head, face, and arm. Tony offers to take care of any cost related to her treatment, but their relationship ends on bad terms. Svetlana Kirilenko, the maternal cousin of Tony's ex-comare Irina, and the manager of a home care nursing business. During her childhood, Svetlana developed an osteosarcoma in her leg, which was amputated soon afterwards. Tony comments that she looks like the actress Greta Garbo. She was first hired as Livia Soprano's nurse since Janice had left town. Svetlana resurfaces as Uncle Junior's nurse after he suffers a fall at the courthouse. One afternoon while Uncle Junior is asleep, Tony has sex with Svetlana on Junior's sofa, but they are caught by Junior's nurse, Branka. Irina soon finds out about this and informs Carmela about the affair, prompting Carmela's violent confrontation of Tony and their ultimate separation. Svetlana later tells Tony that Branka told Irina about their affair after an argument over Svetlana's withholding Federal Insurance Contributions Act tax and other taxes from her paycheck. Tony admires Svetlana for her toughness of spirit and her refusal to allow her disability and misfortune to get in the way of her ambitions. Arguably, Svetlana is the most psychologically balanced of all Tony's extramarital affairs. Juliana Skiff, a real estate developer of Jewish descent. She meets Tony in season 6 when offering to buy a building that he owns to be converted into a Jamba Juice. They later begin an affair, along with a business relationship, but never consummate their relationship sexually. Tony backs off and decides to be faithful to Carmela, who stuck with him after the shooting and seems re-devoted to him. Juliana eventually dates Christopher Moltisanti, and the two begin a very destructive, codependent drug habit. She is last seen attending Christopher's funeral service, where she mentions that they had split up. Therapy. Tony has suffered from panic attacks that sometimes cause him to lose consciousness since his childhood. He has his first on-screen panic attack while cooking sausages at his son's birthday party. This occurs in a flashback in the pilot episode. Tony loses consciousness and causes a small explosion when he drops a bottle of lighter fluid onto the coals. Tony describes the experience of the panic attack as feeling like he had ginger ale in his skull. This prompts him to seek help for the attacks. After extensive testing that includes an MRI scan and blood work, no physical cause can be found, so Dr. Cusimano refers Tony to psychiatrist Dr. Jennifer Melfi. Tony's therapy allows a discussion of his thoughts and feelings away from both aspects of his life. This forum, Tony is initially very resistant to the idea that there was a psychiatric cause for his symptoms. He resents being in therapy and refuses to accept the diagnosis of panic attacks given him by the neurologists who had investigated his illness. Tony begins to open up once Dr. Melfi explains the doctor-patient confidentiality rules. He tells her about the stress of his business life. He has a feeling that he has come in at the end of something and describes a reverence for the glorified old days of the mafia. Tony leaves out the violence associated with his criminal career. Tony tells Dr. Melfi a story about ducks landing in his pool. He describes his mother Livia, a cold, mean-spirited woman with whom he has an openly hostile relationship. By the end of the first session, Tony has admitted that he feels depressed, but storms out when Dr. Melfi presses him further about the relationship between his symptoms and the ducks. When the family visits Green Grove, a retirement community where Tony is trying to place his mother, Livia's derisive outburst prompts a second panic attack. Melfi prescribes Prozac as an antidepressant, telling him that no one needs to suffer from depression with the wonders of modern pharmacology. Tony fails to attend their next scheduled session. At their next session, Tony is still reluctant to face his psychological weaknesses. Tony is quick to credit the medication for his improved mood, but Dr. Melfi tells him it cannot be that, as it takes 6 weeks to work. She credits their therapy sessions. Tony describes a dream where a bird steals his penis. Melfi extrapolates that Tony has projected his love for his family onto the family of ducks living in his pool. This brings him to tears, to his consternation. She tells him that their flight from the pool sparked his panic attack through the overwhelming fear of somehow losing his own family. In the episode 46 long, they continue discussing Tony's mother and her difficulties living alone. Tony admits that he feels guilty because his mother could not be allowed to live with his family. We learn that he has been left to care for his mother alone by his sisters. When Dr. Melfi asks him to remember good experiences from his childhood, he has difficulty. He blames Carmela for preventing his mother from living with them. Later they discuss Livia's car accident, and Melfi suggests depression may have contributed to the accident. Tony misunderstands her and becomes angry. Tony has a panic attack while visiting his mother's home after she moves to Green Grove. In a later session, Dr. Melfi pushes Tony to admit he has feelings of anger towards his mother, and he again storms out. During this episode, Tony introduces the concept of him acting like the sad clown, happy on the outside but sad on the inside. In Denial, Anger, Acceptance, Tony discusses Jackie's cancer with Dr. Melfi. She tries to use it as an example of Tony's negative thinking contributing to his depression. Tony becomes angry and storms out. He feels she is trying to trick him and manipulate his thoughts using the pictures that decorate her office. After Jackie worsens and Tony is called a Frankenstein by a business associate, he returns to therapy to discuss these things with Dr. Melfi. She asks him if he feels like a monster. In Fortunate Son, Tony discusses a childhood memory of an early panic attack. He saw his father and uncle mutilate Mr. Satriel, the local butcher, and later fainted at a family dinner made with free meat from Satriel's shop. Dr. Melfi makes a connection between meat and Tony's panic attacks. She explores his mother's attitude to the fruits of his father's labor. Later, Dr. Melfi tries prescribing lithium as a mood stabilizer. In the episode Isabella, Tony sinks into a severe depressive episode and experiences hallucinations. He sees a beautiful Italian woman named Isabella in his neighbor's garden. Tony sees Isabella several times during the episode and later learns that she never existed. Melfi theorizes that Isabella was an idealized maternal figure that Tony's subconscious produced because he was deeply upset about his own mother's actions at the time. In I Dream of Jeannie Q. Samano, Tony abruptly ends his therapy and persuades Dr. Melfi to go into hiding when he discovers that Uncle Junior has found out about their sessions. The relationship between Tony and Dr. Melfi is up and down, with Tony reaching a level of comfort with Dr. Melfi that he has never experienced with anyone else before, not even his wife. This closeness leads Tony to have something of a crush on Dr. Melfi, something that is unattainable. However, the prying from Dr. Melfi is uncomfortable for Tony, and he often turns sarcastic and antagonistic towards her, leading to an ongoing strain in their relationship. In the episode when Tony's sister, Janice, goes back to Seattle, it is revealed during a rushed conversation between Janice and Tony that their mother suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. During the episode The Second Coming, aired in part Roman II of Season 6, Melfi's therapist suggests to her that her work with Tony could be considered enabling toward Tony's sociopathic tendencies. Finally, in the penultimate episode of the series, The Blue Comet, Melfi severs her relationship with Tony after reading research recommended by her therapist that indicates sociopaths can use talk therapy to improve their skills in manipulating others and use what is learned in therapy to bick. Shootings. In the first season, Tony is attacked by William Johnson Petit Claiborne and Rasheen Ray, two hitmen sent by Donny Peduana to execute Tony. Tony sustains an injury to his ear, which is partially shot off, and minor bruises and cuts from crashing his vehicle. One of the two assailants, Claiborne, is shot dead by Ray in an attempt to kill Tony, and Ray is left bruised but runs off. In the premiere of the sixth season, members-only Junior Soprano, suffering from dementia, believes Tony to be Gennaro Little Pussy Malanga and shoots him in the abdomen. Tony dials 911 but loses consciousness before being able to tell the operator what happened. The second episode of the sixth season, Join the Club, Tony is in a medically induced coma in the hospital. In the second and third episode, the viewer sees Tony in a dream-like state, eventually arriving at what could be purgatory, where he is greeted by a man who takes the physical form of his late cousin Tony Blundetto. The shadowy figure in the doorway of the house has the profile of his mother, who is dead. The voice of a younger version of his daughter calls him back. At the end of the third episode, he awakes from his coma in a confused but stable state. By the fourth episode, Tony is mobile and fully aware and has regained his voice. Tony's attitude toward life is changed by his near-death experience. He has yet to discuss his experiences while unconscious with anyone close to him. However, in the season 6 episode Kaisha, he admits to Phil Leotardo, who had just suffered a heart attack, that while he was in a coma, he went to a place where he never wants to go again. While talking philosophy with John Schwinn, another patient at the hospital, he mentions that while in the coma he had the experience of being drawn towards somewhere he did not want to go and narrowly avoided it. In the sixth episode of Season 6, Part 2, Kennedy and Heidi, Tony sustains minor injuries in a car accident that seriously injures his nephew Christopher Moltisanti. Tony suffocates Christopher after this accident. Tony is on bed rest for a few days and quickly recovers. Nonetheless, this gives his family quite a scare and a painful memory of his nearly fatal shooting the previous year. Dreams. Tony sometimes has vivid dreams that are shown to the viewer. Episodes with dream sequences include Pax Soprano, Isabella Funhouse, Everybody Hurts, Calling All Cars, and The Test Dream. In the pilot, Tony tells Dr. Melfi about a dream he had wherein a screw in his belly button, when removed, causes his penis to fall off. He tries to find a car mechanic who had worked on his Lincoln when Tony drove Lincoln's to put it back on, but a duck swoops down and snatches it from his hand. In Meadowlands, Tony has a dream that several people in his life are present in Dr. Melfi's office. Hesh Rabkin scrolling by the window, AJ behind the door, Silvio Dante having sex with a woman in the waiting room, and Polly Walnuts and Big Pussy reading Chinese newspapers. This causes him to worry that people will find out he is seeing a psychiatrist. The dream ends with Tony confronting Melfi, seeing Jackie April, Esser, on his deathbed smoking a cigarette, asking Tony, "You smell that? That's rain," and only to find out that Melfi is his mother, Livia. In Pax Soprano, Tony has several dreams and fantasies about Dr. Melfi. He becomes convinced that he is in love with her, but she turns him down when he makes advances towards her. In Isabella, Tony, suffering from depression after Big Pussy disappears, acquaints himself with a dental student named Isabella who is staying in the Cusimano home while they are on vacation. He later discovers that he'd hallucinated Isabella due to taking too much lithium, and that Isabella represented the mother he never had. In Funhouse, an extended dream sequence exposes many of Tony's subconscious thoughts and feelings through symbolic and sometimes bizarre events. He attempts suicide to preempt a doctor's diagnosis of early death by dousing himself in gasoline and lighting himself on fire. He witnesses himself shooting Polly Walnuts to death during a card game. He has an innuendo. In Everybody Hurts, Tony dreams of his ex-comare Gloria Trillo shortly after learning of her suicide by hanging. He visits her apartment and finds her in a black dress with a black scarf around her neck. She is cooking dinner, and when she goes over to the oven, the scarf drapes across Tony. Plaster falls in front of Tony, and when he looks up, He sees that the chandelier is almost pulled out of the ceiling. Gloria is suddenly back at the table and offers Tony a choice between seeing what she has under her dress or her scarf. As she begins to peel away the scarf, Tony wakes up and makes his way to the bathroom for some medication. In Calling All Cars, Tony has two dreams featuring Ralph Cifaretto. In the first, he is being driven by Carmela in the back of his father's old car while Ralph sits in the passenger seat. A caterpillar is crawling on the back of Ralph's head. Tony's fellow passenger in the back seat changes. Gloria Trillo and Svetlana Kirilenko are both seen. The caterpillar turns into a butterfly. Dr. Melfi later tells him that the dream signifies a change for Ralphie recently killed by Tony and Carmela being in control, which Tony doesn't like. In the second dream, Tony follows Ralph to an old house, which Ralph enters. Tony is dressed in trousers, suspenders, and an undershirt. He knocks on the door and a female figure descends slowly in shadow. The door creaks ominously. Tony says he is there for the stonemason job that does not speak English. Well, Tony's grandfather was an immigrant stonemason. Just as Tony is about to enter the house, he wakes up. In the test dream, Tony comes to terms with having to kill his cousin Tony Blundetto. The episode reflects on his inner demons and fears, including his children's future, his relationship with his wife. He is again shown in his father's old car, accompanied by a range of past associates. In Join the Club, a comatose Tony finds himself in an alternate universe where he is a law-abiding salesman on a business trip. Among other differences, his accent has changed and his hotel's bartender condescends to him in sharp contrast to the bartender at the Bing, who is a recurring punching bag for Tony. Tony has mistakenly taken another man's briefcase, Kevin Finnerty's, along with all of his identification and work. The episode follows his attempts to discern his identity, recover his briefcase, and get back to his family. In Kennedy and Heidi, a stressed Tony Soprano has a dream following the death of Christopher Moltisanti. In this dream, he tells his therapist that Christopher was a burden and that he is relieved that he was dead. After that, he also tells her that he murdered Big Pussy and his cousin Tony Blundetto. Following the dream, he acts differently to his friends and family, trying to see if they also feel relieved now that Christopher is dead. Legacy and cultural impact. The character of Tony Soprano was one of the first likable anti-hero characters in television. Playwright Craig Wright stated, "A show like The Sopranos has a soothing quality because ultimately there's an unspoken assumption behind it that even the most monstrous people are haunted by the same concerns we're haunted by." Tony Soprano quickly became a pop culture icon during the show's run. In an article for the Los Angeles Times, Chris Lee referred to Tony Soprano as a cultural sensation who became the unlikeliest of sex symbols. On the importance of Gandolfini's performance, Lee stated he forever rejiggered television's fascination with morally challenged anti-heroes and less than physically perfect protagonists. The Globe and Mail wrote, "Women made Tony Soprano an unlikely sex symbol, and the men found him no less seductive. Wish fulfillment has always been at the queasy heart of the mobster genre, the longing for a life outside the bounds of convention, mingled with the conflicted desire to see the perpetrator punished for the same transgression. So it was for the fictional men of the straight world. The use of an abrupt cut to black followed by several seconds of silence led many viewers to initially believe that their cable or DVR had cut out at a crucial moment. Opposing interpretations soon emerged among viewers regarding the ultimate fate of Tony, with some believing that he was killed while others believe that he remains alive. The final scene continues to be interpreted by media and fans alike about the fate of Tony. However, Chase consistently refuses to give a definitive answer to the ending. Following Gandolfini's death on June 19, 2013, Gandolfini's portrayal of Soprano was praised for its influence on subsequent other TV characters. TV Guide columnist Matt Roush stated, "Without Tony, there's no Vic Mackey of The Shield, no Al Swearingen of Deadwood, no Don Draper of Mad Men, whose creator, Matthew Weiner, honed his craft as a writer on The Sopranos. Similar testimonials were included by his co-stars and colleagues. Bryan Cranston stated that his Breaking Bad character, Walter White, would not have existed without Tony Soprano. Mark Lawson of The Guardian praised Gandolfini for his towering central performance as Tony Soprano, writing The Sopranos was part of a wave of American TV dramas that finally persuaded cineasts and critics who had been snobbish and dismissive about television as a medium to accept the smaller screen as an artistic equivalent of them. Michael, having never watched The Sopranos, watched through it to prepare for the role, describing it as an intense process.